Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're traveling back in time to a very, very different Britain. I want you to picture the days of World War I. Now, when we usually think of that war, we picture soldiers, muddy trenches, and loud battles, right? But today, we're looking at a completely different kind of front line. We're looking at the kitchen. During the First World War, food actually became a critical part of the war effort. It was practically a weapon itself. And absolutely everyone, from young kids to grandmothers, had to fight in this kitchen battle just to keep the country going.
Okay, let's dive into this. I want you to imagine waking up tomorrow morning, walking into your kitchen, opening the cupboards, and finding that your absolute favorite foods have just vanished. Poof, gone. You head down to the local shops, and the shelves are completely bare. No sugar, hardly any meat, definitely no nice snacks. Well, that is exactly what started happening in Britain. But why? Where did all the food actually go? To understand that, we need to look at how Britain got its meals in the first place.
You see, at the start of the war, Britain faced a massive, massive problem. Only 1/3 of the food people ate was actually grown at home in Britain. The other 2/3, that had to cross the deep, wide ocean on cargo ships to reach the country. That meant Britain totally relied on those ships to bring in what it needed to keep its people fed. And as you might guess, in wartime, relying on ships to cross the ocean is incredibly dangerous.
Now, what made those oceans quite so dangerous? The German military used submarines called U-boats. These were sneaky, underwater ships that patrolled the Atlantic Ocean specifically to attack the merchant ships carrying Britain's food. Just imagine it for a second. Because of these U-boat attacks, thousands upon thousands of tons of meat, sugar, and wheat never made it to the shops. Instead, all those potential dinners went straight to the muddy bottom of the sea.
Because so much food was sinking to the bottom of the ocean, the food that did manage to arrive safely became extremely rare. And what happens when things are rare? They get expensive. The prices for everyday essential items, like a simple loaf of bread or a cut of meat, literally more than doubled during the war. Imagine your favorite treat suddenly costing twice as much out of your pocket money, just overnight. When prices shoot up like that and food starts disappearing, people get scared. And in the early days of the war, terrified people started doing something called hoarding. Basically, they were panic buying. They rushed to the shops and bought way, way more food than they actually needed, hiding it away in their cupboards because they were terrified of starving. But of course, this just made the problem so much worse. Hoarding left the shop shelves totally empty for everyone else, and it caused ridiculously long queues of frustrated, hungry people stretching all the way down the street. Growing your own food. The government had to come up with some highly creative solutions to stop the whole country from going hungry. This brings us to one of the most famous slogans of the First World War, dig for victory. The government basically told families everywhere that it was their patriotic duty to grab a shovel, and they did. People literally dug up their perfectly neat, pretty green lawns and beautiful flower beds. Instead of roses and daisies, they planted cabbages, carrots, and potatoes right in their front yards. Literally, every spare patch of dirt became a mini farm. But they didn't just stop at front gardens. Every piece of grass they could find was transformed. Public spaces, common land, even your local public parks were chopped up into patches called allotments. An allotment is basically a rented patch of land just for growing vegetables. So imagine going down your local park to play football, only to find the entire pitch has been plowed over to grow massive fields of turnips and onions. That's exactly how desperate the kitchen battle was getting. Of course, growing all this extra food required a ton of hard work on the big farms too. But there was a huge problem here. Most of the young men who usually worked those farms were away fighting in the war. So who was going to drive the tractors and bring in the crops? The women. Thousands of women heroically stepped up and joined an organization called the Women's Land Army. They threw on their boots, went out into the muddy fields, and worked incredibly hard to make sure the country's harvest didn't fail. The government also brought in a very strict set of wartime laws known as DORA, which stood for the Defense of the Realm Act. Under DORA, wasting food became a literal crime. You could actually be arrested for it. Check out this wonderfully wacky fact from the sources. Under the DORA laws, it was actually a criminal offense to feed your leftover bread crusts to a horse or a chicken. Every single crumb was meant for humans to eat, and wasting it could land you in serious trouble. Fair shares for everyone. By 1918, just asking people nicely not to waste food wasn't working anymore, and strict, brand new rules were desperately needed. So, the crucial point is that the government introduced something called compulsory rationing. Compulsory means you have absolutely no choice. You have to do it. And rationing means limiting the amount of something. These were incredibly strict rules that completely controlled exactly how much food a person was legally allowed to buy at the shops. But remember, it wasn't about punishing people. It was all about ensuring absolute fairness across the whole country. And this brilliantly illustrates just how serious things were. Every single person in the country was handed a ration book filled with little paper coupons. When you bought your food, you had to hand over a coupon. Once your coupons for the week were gone, well, that was it. No more food for you. These rules applied to absolutely everyone. Even the king and queen, living in their grand, gigantic royal palaces, had to use ration books and hand over coupons, just like a normal family down the street. So, what exactly was in this ration book? Well, you couldn't just walk into a shop and grab whatever you fancied anymore. The government specifically rationed the foods that were hardest to get: sugar, meat, butter, cheese, and margarine. You were only allowed a tiny, specific amount of these items each week. You really had to make your small lump of butter last the whole 7 days. Now, you might be thinking that having your food limited sounds terrible, but actually, rationing was incredibly fair. Think about it. Before rationing, rich people could just buy whatever they wanted at those super high prices, while poor people went hungry. But with ration books, it didn't matter if you were a millionaire or the poorest family in town, everyone got the exact same amount of sugar and meat. It guaranteed that even the poorest people were able to put food on the table. Let's move to and see how this builds into the kitchen itself. Weird wartime meals. Mothers and cooks had to get wildly creative to feed their families with the tiny bits of ingredients they had, and sometimes that creativity got a little bit gross. Take bread, for example. You might be used to lovely, fluffy white bread for your sandwiches today, but during the war, wheat was incredibly scarce. So bakers were actually forced by the government to make what was called war bread. To save on wheat flour, they baked mashed up potatoes right into the dough. The result was a dark, heavy, and often completely soggy loaf of bread that honestly did not taste very good at all. And because there was hardly any real meat or sweet treats, cooks had to invent some very strange recipes by substituting the missing ingredients. Imagine sitting down to Sunday dinner and your parents serve you a mock duck. Spoiler alert, it wasn't a duck at all. It was actually a loaf made completely out of lentils, maybe shaped to look like a bird if you were lucky. And for dessert, how about a nice bowl of chocolate potato pudding? Yep, you guessed it, even more potatoes acting as a substitute for flour and sugar. You really had to use your imagination at dinner time. Now, if cooking a fake duck made of lentils was just a bit too weird, or if you simply didn't have the fuel at home to heat your stove, there was another option. The government opened places called national kitchens. These were big, government-run public dining halls. You could walk in and buy a cheap, warm, healthy meal, like a big bowl of hearty stew or a slice of pie. It was a brilliant way to help people survive the shortages without having to do the strange, potato-filled cooking themselves. So we've seen how U-boats caused massive shortages, how people dug up their local parks for vegetables, and how the government had to strictly ration food to keep things fair. It was a massive kitchen battle that absolutely everyone had to fight together. So I want to leave you with a question to think about. Knowing what you know now about the soggy potato-filled war bread and those strange lentil mock ducks, could you survive a week eating a World War I diet? Think about that the next time you open your fully stocked fridge. Thanks for exploring history with me today, and keep learning.